Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Truth Be Told Minuteman Report. This is Robert Hensley, your Truth Be Told Minuteman, coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere in North America. I like to refer to this as the bunker. Welcome today. We're taking a look at the past. We're digging into the past, we should say. So, doing some reading over the weekend, as I do, and came across I don't know, just some information that I thought was really interesting, and then I started thinking about some recent tragedies. Last year there was the beachside condo in Florida where the whole pool deck collapsed and lives were lost and people lost their homes, and then the earthquakes in Turkey. So many buildings collapsed. During the earthquake, and I started thinking about the Roman Coliseum, right? Like, yes, it was damaged in an earthquake, but for all intents and purposes, the building is indestructible, right? The concrete part of this building is and has been around for ages, and is really kind of wearing pretty well. And yet, in modern technology, in our modern age, we have to have our buildings inspected every 40 years to see whether or not we have to condemn them and tear them down to rebuild a new structure, based on, the wear and tear of our concrete or the materials used to construct a building. It seems to me that buildings, especially residential buildings, shouldn't be constructed in a way that they are disposable, right? I mean, a huge amount of money goes into the materials to build a structure, not to mention the manpower. And then people live there for a few years, right? In some of these cases, these buildings are only like 10 years old, and then they crack, they fall down, something buckles, and sometimes not even because of an earthquake, just because, like the case in Florida, it just shitty workmanship, bam, the building falls. And yet there are these amazing temples and ruins and things that were created by the Greeks and the Romans that are, have stood the test of time. What's the difference? What did they know that we don't know, right? I mean, think about it. Today we have, engineers and supercomputers that are figuring out all of the, there's like, how can you possibly make a mistake? I mean, concrete roads, right? I mean, our roadways across the United States are terrible. We need them, we have them, but we can't maintain them. And yet we have roads crisscrossing across parts of Europe that have been, they were used by the Romans. They've survived centuries. And they're probably no more rough today than they were at the time that the Romans were using them. So if they were able to figure this out then, why can't we figure it out now? What did they didn't have degrees for engineering in ancient Rome. If these guys, and a lot of it was done by the military, if these guys were able to figure out how to build a road that doesn't collapse and has drainage and all this other great stuff, or that they're building these buildings, and they're still standing, how come we can't figure it out? That's what I want to know. And I think that part of this lies in just kind of how we deal with history. Human beings have this, we have kind of a colonial mentality, and I don't know whether we've always had that, if it's part of human nature, or if it's something that we've kind of taken on inherently. But when we overtake or surpass something, we want to eradicate everything before it. It's not enough for us just to take out a civilization. We have to destroy its history. So if they figured out something fantastic, if they figured out how to do something, we don't pay attention to their stories, their oral traditions, their history to find out how we can claim that knowledge and carry it into the future, right? We look at people, maybe they aren't wearing pants. They're wearing a banana leaf and we think that they're savages. Meanwhile, they've figured out some really great, wonderful technique for doing something, and we, choose to, kill them all by giving them disease-ridden blankets and eradicating them, taking their land, and then in 100 years' time, we'll look back at what they did and be like, wow, if only that's technology, if that had survived, could save the world. Yeah, because we only care about making ourselves look good in the moment. And that's colonialist, revisionist history at its best. Anyway, back to, I went a little tirade there, I'm sorry. But back to Roman concrete, right? Because they've started testing this stuff now, so they're figuring out why or what the Romans did that was different. And, we're hearing about the use of, these companies now are like, oh, we're experimenting with self-healing concrete, or concrete that, can kind of morph and change and go with the weather and less damage is seen. Yeah, honey, the Romans did that ages ago, right? So that's the secret, self-healing concrete. So what the Romans were doing is they were taking lime or limestone, they were taking volcanic material, and they were taking water and they were mixing it together and forming concrete. But what they were doing that was different was that they were heating the lime, right? The limestone, turning it into something called quicklime, and adding water. And then as they were heating and adding with the water, it was creating this wonderful, wonderful substance that, when combined with the volcanic material, and once that heating property within the quicklime, which helps to cure the concrete. Once the concrete was cured, then as the concrete would shift, or if there were small cracks or fissures that would form, and then it would rain, water would mix with this quicklime and it would recrystallize and heal those cracks and those fissures, basically allowing the concrete to just kind of live, like I said, self-healing concrete. So this concrete is really stable enough that, excess water, things like that, I'm sure it could be damaged and has been damaged over the years, where it was irreparable, but so much of what's left and what we can see is because they had this technology that was somehow discarded. I'm sure over the years, people tried to maintain or tried to duplicate, and found that it was too expensive, or, someone decided that there was some petrochemical that they could add to the concrete and that it would do the same thing, and then it didn't really, but, all sorts of things happened. But, so the Romans had this great formula, and now there are companies who are trying to replicate this kind of Roman-esque self-healing concrete, because it turns out that it's sustainable. So it's just like all of the people who grew hemp for years before cotton became the thing. Once hemp was deemed illegal, and cotton became the only substitute that we had that we could export, it didn't matter that you only get one harvest of cotton per year, and that it uses a butt ton of water to grow, and it's disease and insect what's the word, not it's not disease or insect strong, resistant, where hemp is sustainable. You get 4 growing seasons in a year versus 1 growing season of cotton, and the fibers can be used to make a multitude of things, the same stuff that cotton can. sometimes stronger materials. Plus there's oil, which takes the place of petroleum products. There's all kinds of stuff. Our forefathers, George Washington grew hemp. That's what they farmed. It was a really diverse crop that could be used in so many ways. But again, we've just kind of rewrote things that was a harmful thing, that was a bad thing, that was something that we didn't need to think about, that we shouldn't think about. We had cotton. Let's pay attention to this over here because look at us, we're wonderful. And it's, again, the answers to so many of our problems, it feels like those answers lie in the past. And I think that's why I enjoy things like the Parapod Festival coming up at the end of this month, March 31st and April 1st in Santa Clarita, California, is because we're bringing together people like Billy Carson and Dr. Robert Schoch and some of these people who talk about the past, ancient civilizations, the way things were, the way things were done, and not just in kind of that, weird science sort of way or, kind of, woo-woo UFO way, but where they're really talking about ancient technologies and things that were there, things that they were able to do that we haven't been able to figure out how to replicate. And we were so busy wiping them out to make ourselves look better that we've lost so much of our history as a human race. So again, really excited for the Parapod Festival because I want to learn more about, ancient technologies and civilizations. And I think these guys are great sources of information. But that brings us to the end of today's Minuteman Report. So when you're hearing these stories about buildings collapsing under their own weight or, people getting away with, building buildings using shoddy materials or shoddy workmanship, and then people die because the building collapses, just remember that at one point in time, we as a human race, right, the only race of beings on the planet that can construct this stuff, at one point we did have the technology, we did have the material to build things that last. So as always, until next week, I hope you'll stay true. And if you have any ideas, show ideas, questions, anything you want me to look into, let me know. You can always email me at reportminuteman@gmail.com. And we will see you next week.